Welcome to episode 5 of The Well. We made it to 5.
We did.
Happy 5th anniversary. No, that's not right. That's not
No,
right, is
that's
it?
not
No?
right
Okay.
at all.
I tried. I
Good
tried.
try.
Well, welcome. Good morning.
Good morning.
You always fail on that. I'm saying good morning to you, and you just kind of have this,
Delayed.
yeah, LeMay. So cheers to you with your coffee.
Mm-hmm.
To everyone that is watching, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for engagement. We've been surprised. I say this every podcast, but it never stops surprising me to the amount of people that have enjoyed what we've been doing. So we're going to keep doing it. Even if you're not enjoying it, we're going to try and keep doing it. So
That's right.
that's right. And today, so this topic has come up for Kathryn and I for years. And it's been something that we've seen many different flavors, shapes, sizes, approaches, thought process, lack of thought process. And what am I talking about? The leadership space. Now, this is not just job related. So we're going to span not only the workforce, but how to be a leader at home, which is something that we've experimented heavily on, I think anyway.
Yes,
I
we
don't know
have.
if you would agree.
We have.
So we have this is going to be an interesting one. So stay tuned into this one. It might be a little wonky at first, but I think we're going to get there. I think we're going to get to where we need to go, or at least expose what we want to expose. I don't know. We should just get into this already, right?
Yes, we should.
Okay. I'll let you start because I need more coffee. Clearly, I am not caffeinated enough this morning.
Okay. All right. Well, I've got the perfect question. Let's take a trip down memory lane and let's reminisce a little bit. Who were your Okay, thinking about like when we grew up in school, we always got asked a question by our teachers. And it was, oh, well, today we're going to do a report on your heroes. So I want you to do a report on your heroes. So my question is, growing up, who were your heroes, people that you admired? And it doesn't have to be a physical person. It could also be a cartoon.
I have a super weird response. I think the first memory I have of this now, I can't believe I'm going to admit this. My brother and I used to watch a show. I'm going to date myself, WKRP in Cincinnati, and I wanted to be the DJ. I always wanted to be a DJ. I thought being a DJ was the coolest job ever. And I'm talking like a radio DJ. So sitting in my little booth, pulling records, I thought that that would be the coolest job ever. I don't know why that's the first memory of like, this is what I want to be when I grow up. That it's kind of weird, right? It's just a weird thing. And
I think so.
I remember fighting with my brother about this because we would always pretend to be the characters in the show. And I always wanted to be, I think his name was Johnny Fever. Gosh,
Wow.
I think,
Good
I think,
memory. Now I'm going to have to Google
uh,
that.
yeah, I think it's Johnny Fever. I'm sure someone can
Fever.
check me on that, but we used to fight over who would get to be Johnny Fevers.
Can I ask why you thought he was so cool? Like, or is it you just had a draw and you couldn't explain it?
Yeah, I don't know why. I think since a young age, I've just been drawn to music in so many different ways,
That
and I
is
thought,
true.
wow,
Yeah.
that would be. But I was young. I mean, we're talking that show came out in the '70s, so I was a little kid. I think
That's
in the
cool.
'70s. Yeah, I think like '78. It was short run. I think it only lasted till like 1982 or '83, but.
Mhm.
Anyway, that's my first memory. And the other person that I always looked up to is very cliche. So shout out to Stephen, my dad, who I looked up to because he would take us to his office, and he was just the coolest guy in the office. He always dressed real cool. Everyone always had a smile on their face when he walked in the room. So there was something engaging about that for me. I was like, I kind of like the way that looks, and it looks like it feels pretty good.
Mhm.
So I don't know. Those are the two earliest memories of like what was impactful to me. I go from a TV show to my dad. Wow, that's quite the spectrum. I don't know. More coffee. Go ahead.
I would expect that though, because for me it was similar. But most of my heroes, like, I'm talking like 5-year-old Kathryn. That was mostly I love cartoons, I wanted to be a cartoonist. I just thought the whole process was super cool. So, that was my earliest recognition of my art, my interest in art. But I love the cartoons. Whoever created the cartoons, I was like, "Gosh, I wanna be them. I wanna be a cartoonist." Uh, other heroes were, like, writers. Interestingly enough, like, I would always think, "Who wrote this book?" So I definitely had people like that that I looked up to, and I was like, "Wow, they're amazing, they're so creative." So I kinda defined it more in terms of, like, the creativity. Scientists also, like, were fascinating to me. Like, I remember being sitting in class, and we would talk about we had this one project in school, and I'm sure probably a lot of people had this project where you had to go around and collect bugs, and then you had to use, like, little needles, straight pins to put, like attach
We
them
never did
to
that. We
Really?
never did that. Yeah. We just
It was the
dissected
best.
animals, but not pin insects.
I
I
wasn't
think
a
I
huge
don't
fan of dissection, but the bugs really fascinated me because it was organized. I could label them, but we read about lots of different scientists, and I always thought it was really fascinating. So, historical figures, scientists, writers, and artists, go figure, were kind of my heroes growing up.
So, question for you, fast forward to your college years, did you take any classes where you had to draw, like, insects? Like, as a study?
No, that was a one
Okay,
and done project. It never
gotcha.
carried over. But I'll never forget that project, and I'm sure a lot of people that went to school with me can say the same thing. It was just the coolest project. Anyway, so yes, I did have lots of heroes growing up,
And a
and
weird
we got
fascination with pinning bugs. Okay, we're learning a lot today.
yeah, I still am tempted today when I see no, I'm just kidding.
Wow,
No, I'm kidding.
hide the pins. We do have a lot of push pins. Now it makes a little sense, although I don't think a push pin is really good for that, is
No,
it?
no,
Okay,
straight pen.
got you,
But
got
yes, I mean, Wonder Woman, all the cartoons. Not all of them. She-Ra was a huge one. I was like, "Wow, she's so cool," or yeah, so and we got asked in school, "Who are your heroes? Who do you admire?" And it was always interesting to see what people chose, what people selected, what people said, why people chose who they did. So, I think even today, that carries over.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember or if you did this in your schools where your parents would come or your a family member would come and talk about what they did for a living. And
Yes,
it
we
was
did
always
have
cool
that.
when the kid had like the police officer or the
Always,
fire
uh-huh.
person, right? Or the EMS, somebody that did something that had flashing lights on it or, went into burning buildings.
Oh,
So that
yeah.
was always cool.
I have a quick segue story, random. So I went and did a talk at a middle school last year, and I talked about being an artist and being, working at a company and doing creative direction, etcetera. And the kids were so funny, bless their hearts. They did pay attention, and some of them were super engaged because they were also artistic. But the most that I heard the all the kids talked about one person that came to visit them. It was for career day, and they talked about the animal control guy. That was that I mean, it's so funny to me because they were like, "Wow, he was so cool, and he had all these, like, this equipment, and, he was out there, like, saving people from the animals." It was really cute. It's funny how we, like, create this heroic, image of people. And not to say that he was not heroic. I mean, I would not wanna deal with animals like that, but it was just really funny. They were like, "He was the best," and I was like, "Oh, did he give stuff out?" They were like, "Yeah, he gave stuff out," and, I was like, "It was the freebies, wasn't it? It was the free" No, just kidding. But it was cute, it was funny. I was like, "They'll remember that till they're, like, adults. They'll remember the animal control guy that came to class, and he was so cool and tough,"
God, I remember the animal person coming to, like, I think, when I was in 2nd or 3rd grade and they would bring the animals out, it
Oh,
was like,
yeah.
who was
I
that?
do
Was it
remember that.
not Jack LaLanne? Anyway, there was a guy that used to do it on the Tonight Show that would bring the animals on the show. Anyway, it was like that. Some way
Yeah.
they'd bring out the porcupine or the beaver or something.
Uh-huh.
And that was a bad segue, sorry.
That's
Let's
okay.
move on, shall we?
Yeah, that'd be great.
We'll edit that out, not really.
Please do. No, I'm
Coffee,
just kidding.
more coffee, more coffee. So, as we transition through the years, it sounds weird. As we mature through the years,
Mhm.
and kind of experience leadership at all different levels, we'll kind of jump into we'll jump into the workforce. Now, this is something near and dear to my heart, which, kind of has humble beginnings for us, you and I. But when we're talking about leadership in the workplace, how do you define it?
Oh gosh. You and I both have had really long careers, and we have definitely experienced a lot of different leadership styles, good and bad. And, it's interesting being a kid and looking up to certain heroes, quote unquote. And then fast forward as through the years, that becomes more that transitions. And I don't know how to explain this, but you start looking at people in more of like a leadership. You hear about the word leadership, you start looking at people as bosses or leaders or and your definition of that I think evolves over the years. For me, and I would love 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 to hear what other people define leadership as, but for me it was always I was looking for someone in a leadership role, whether it was my boss or a manager who cared about me as a person and worked with integrity. They gave people credit where credit was due. They promoted people who worked hard for it and earned it. I always had this image of a leader as being someone who was fair, who was, looking out for the people, not so much the company. And I think that was kind of a rude awakening for me a little bit in my early career is people are going to look out for the company, that they can also look out for you, but you know, I I always thought a great leader is someone who looks out for the people. And I think my definition kind of changed over the years and it just continues to change, but there's still core principles that I look for in a leader and in myself as a leader, I think.
So it's as you walk us through that progression, it's interesting. All the things that were popping in my brain, like popcorn, is the progression, right? You hit it at the
Yes.
end. And what I thought leadership was early on in my career was how much money you made, right? And we were talking about this the
Interesting.
other night
Yeah,
is,
we were.
we look up to people because why? Because they're famous, they make a lot of money, something, status, as
Right.
opposed to what good are they doing? How are they providing to the world? How are they touching hearts and minds? Blah, blah, blah. So early on, I grew up in a very aggressive type environment with leadership where it was get it done.
Mhm.
GSD, get shit done, right?
Yeah.
Like at all costs, get it done. We had this one boss, he would literally scream at us, get it done, get it. It was unbelievable the amount of stress that the get it done mentality brings, right? At
Mhm.
all costs, you need to get this done for some arbitrary date that doesn't mean anything. It just impacts someone's bonus.
Right.
So, through the years and through my training and experience, I saw this quote the other day and it kind of encapsulates where I see leadership being the most important, and I'm going to read it. As a leader, you need to inspire hope and make them believe it. So to me, leadership is always in the back of the room in the sense building the people around you, creating community, creating pride, creating autonomy, mastery, purpose to really understand how to organize people to deliver something or be something and a better version of themselves and support them through it and
That
have a
was deep.
team. I know, right? Sorry. We go deep in the well. What can I say? But
So true.
I warned you. I said I'm passionate about this topic because
You are.
I think through the years of abuse, I mean, let's call it what it was.
Right.
We've worked for a lot of questionable individuals or groups that have not always been the kindest of people. So,
True.
and our industry is a tough industry, right? Whether you're, and we've ascended through the ranks. I mean, I've held executive positions with technology companies, with financial institutions. You've held it with logistic companies, banks as well, financial institutions. So we've run in the same circles. And no matter what the industry, on an enterprise wide scale, so I'm talking large companies, you really do feel expendable, right? There is
Mm.
really very little investment in the person, and there's not a lot of care and feeding.
True.
They call it "you're a number" for a reason, right? That wasn't just pulled out of thin air.
So I wanna talk a little bit about the transition period. So being in school, and I don't know what your earliest exposure was to a boss, quote unquote, or a leader, truly, like in real life. But let's talk a little bit about what that experience was, because for me, let's say, like, for example, when I was 18, I was a waitress for a restaurant. And I came into that was my first job, actually. And I was in high school, came into the job. I thought everybody was gonna be nice. I thought, the boss, I didn't really think that much. It was a rude awakening for me. People were mean. My boss didn't really care. And I had to toughen up. Like I'm a very sensitive person by nature, and I've had to really toughen up over the years. And I think for some people, they might have a really great experience for their first job, but then other people don't. And, in my mind, I was like, I'll never be that way. I refuse to be that way. And I think we all go through that at some point. It's like, oh, well, we either assimilate and say, okay, if this is what leadership looks like, I'm going to do this, or we say, okay, no, I don't want to be like that because that feels bad. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
I don't know what your first experience was in that regard.
So I'll fast forward. I won't give my first experience like at 15 washing cars, right? Like working for a car dealer. But
Yeah.
let's fast forward to my college years. I started, and I've had two interesting experiences in a short amount of time with this. So I was baking bagels of all things. I was the baker for a bagel shop, and I
Uh-huh.
had to get up at 3 in the morning, so I didn't really have anybody in the shop, so I would have to open up the shop, had to get everything prepared, do all the prep, start my bake, and then I was pretty much done by, like, noon. But my first experience with that kind of, "Hey, you need to be here every day, you need to do what I hired you to do," was I the oven is over 500 degrees. When you're standing in front of it for hours and not drinking water, you get dehydrated. Well, I ended
Mhm.
up in the hospital, and I got in
Oh
trouble
gosh.
in trouble because I wasn't able to work. So
Right.
I was like, "Well, that sucks." Right? Like, I couldn't help it. Any case, when I left that job, I took another cooking job in a hotel and basically worked up my way to sous chef there, and the boss was amazing. My executive chef treated me so good. We
Mhm.
worked an incredible amount of hours. I mean, we were always working, but he never asked us to do anything he wasn't willing to do. And I saw that, and I had a lot of respect for anybody that's willing to roll up their sleeves, that has privilege and rank, to jump in and do
Agree.
whatever's needed to get done and be part of the team, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely be part of the team. So when I saw that and experienced it, it impacted me. And shout out to Mark Davis. That was his name. I will never forget him.
Yeah.
He wrote me an incredible recommendation for culinary school and just said, this is a career that you absolutely should do. You're extremely talented, and just really pumped me up,
And
gave me a lot
encouraged
of
you.
encouragement and confidence, right?
Yeah.
So that was a great moment for me to experience leadership in a different way.
Yeah.
So that's where I think that the change happened for me in my mind, as far as what I wanted to do. Of course, I left the cooking profession, unfortunately, but because I've had a lot of bad executive chefs that I've worked under as well. But that was a good experience.
I have a question. I'm segueing into another question, sorry. But that was a
We
great
don't
story.
need to explain it. We don't need to explain our segues.
What moment taught you leadership isn't about being in charge, but about being accountable?
I think when started to have direct reports, as far as when I had people reporting to me,
Yeah.
there was a different level of responsibility for me to actually be able to understand what people are looking for, also tempering their expectations because it's like, hey, I want to make, I want to this insane amount more money this year. And okay, how are we going to get there? So let's start the conversation. Let's rewind 12 months and let's build out the plan of how we're going to get there. Can't promise you'll get the money, but you will get the knowledge and experience needed to ensure that your next job, or if you don't get it here, you can get it somewhere else. This is how you do it. So, really thinking through, and I always hated the term 360, right? But looking at
Yes.
looking at performance differently
Mhm.
because if you set a bar super high, and it's why I never liked the term high performing teams because to me, it's burnout. So
Right.
sustainability. How can we become sustainable and predictable and blah blah blah. So I'll
Okay.
stop there. I won't get into my business language. Sorry. I took the bait.
Stop. Okay. No, I'm kidding.
You can
I
Elmo
think
me. Just Elmo.
oh, yeah. Please stop.
No, enough. Let's move on.
I know.
There you go. You can all use that. You're welcome.
I remember that early on in my career, I used to have senior leaders, a handful. And this was always very shocking to me that they would say, "Don't ever say you're sorry." I have had several in my career, and I always thought, "What? Why? Because I'm admitting fault? Because no, and I always thought to myself, I will say I'm sorry. Why is that such a bad thing to say you're sorry and to take accountability for something if you did something wrong? And maybe people disagree, and you've got a really strong case as to why you wouldn't say you're sorry, but I always really disliked that when I engaged with quote unquote leaders that they were in the wrong, but never took accountability for it. So I think for me, that was a sign to be like, I don't want to be like that. I want people to know, hey, leaders make mistakes too, but it's how you deal with them. That's the important part. So,
So would you say I a leader if a leader is vulnerable, is that a weakness or is that a superpower?
gosh, that's a really hard question. I think vulnerability has always worked in my favor. I think you need to be seen as human, who you're just like everybody else. You just may be better at organizing or business or money or whatever it is, but I feel like that's a superpower, maybe, but I feel like it's a really good way to connect with people.
Yeah, I'm agree. I think it's a superpower. I think if you can show up vulnerable and still have an ease of command about you,
Right.
there's something very compelling to that. And people, in my opinion, tend to trust easier with that personality because
Yeah.
you feel cared for. Now, as long as you're not using it as a manipulation tactic, but that's I really think that that's a phenomenal quality in leadership and we should see it more. I think in our generation we were kind of raised with, you eat your feelings. You don't show your feelings
Right, right.
outwardly and you have to show strength and sometimes you don't, right? Sometimes, right?
Yeah, true. Triggered something. Showing your feelings and being emotional are two different things. And
Yes.
I have known leaders, quote unquote, who were emotional and it was not a good thing. Every decision was made with an emotion behind it. It wasn't level headed, cool, thinking through consequences. And as women, we get this a lot. Oh, you're so emotional, like So I feel like we have to be careful even more, in the workplace.
I gotta say, I've worked with a lot of emotional men, like a lot.
I actually
I
was gonna bring that up.
and I feel like men get a pass, right? I've had phones thrown at me, whiteboards thrown at me.
Yeah.
I've been cursed out in every single language, I think, literally, and just accosted in so many, and that to me, isn't that emotion, right? So
Mhm.
why do we just call out women for being emotional? Because if they get upset or if they look a certain way or react a certain way, yet we get a pass. It sucks.
Yeah.
It's stupid. Emotion's emotion. It doesn't really have a gender.
Yeah.
Last time I
Yeah.
checked. So there's a lot of I've witnessed and experienced way too many leaders that lead with a lot of emotion, and it
Mhm.
creates a bit of toxicity, in my opinion.
So, let me move us into life in general, not the workplace, but let's talk about life. Talking about emotion, talking about leadership qualities. So, what do you feel like transfers over into the home? So, with kids or with each other
Yeah,
or extended family by that matter.
I think one thing that I didn't realize until later on is the team aspect of the household,
Mm,
looking at it
mhm.
as a team. And we all have a part to play as team members, as individuals, but
Right.
as team, this is kind of how we should operate as a team. So I feel like we accomplished that here. It
Agree.
was painful, right? Like getting through the progression of understanding that accountability is super important, especially as a teammate. You
Yes.
have to be accountable for your stuff. And if you're not, you hurt the rest of the team. So I think accountability can be used as an emotional influence to get people accountable differently without just mandating it.
Right.
So, and we talked about this, and it used to, and I'm sure this is an unpopular opinion. You get good grades, I'm going to give you money. You do your chores, I'm going to give you money. You do your laundry, you clean up your room, I'm going to give you money. No,
Right.
those are what you're expected to do to live in the house. That's the rent you pay. So
Right.
to me, you don't get rewarded for doing what I expect you to do. You get rewarded if you go above and beyond expectations. Not
Yeah.
all the time though. I mean, but you should want to do it. And I think for me that the incentive can't always be financial because it creates a trap. I'm not going to work harder unless I'm going to get paid more or I'm going to get
Right.
something out of it. I'm not
Yeah.
going to do more. I'm not going to clean my room. I'm just going to tidy it up because I'm not going to get, I'm not going to get paid for it.
Right.
It's not, to me, that's not a very team centric way to think.
Yeah, and I like, especially with one child, the incentives didn't work. Even when they were little, it was it was very hard to incentivize. And then when we switched the mindset of, okay, let's stop incentivizing and just do it because it's the right thing to do. That right there was everything. It was, hey, if you're not going to do the right thing, it alienates you from the rest of the team, the family, because you're selfishly choosing to make a choice that's not a good choice. So, yes, these skills are transferable. And it's always interesting because before you and I really had conversations around it, I never really thought about it. I never really thought about, which is crazy because I mean, we do that now. We coach people, we teach people that all these skills are transferable in the home and your relationships. That's somewhat why we started Third Entity, and in showing people that these qualities in us are transferable across everything.
No. So, yes. And one of the things you were saying in addition to is the routine that you can create too that allows you to develop patterns, healthy or not, but you also start to get used to it. You get into a rhythm. So you can start to think of timing. How much time am I going to need to accomplish this? Or how much time how much extra time do I need to allow myself after I get these things done? So time management was a huge talking point here
Mhm.
for everyone, right? I think you're the only one I've ever witnessed that is I'll tell you what, she'll put on her calendar, take a shower, right? Like literally, if you look at her I don't know how anybody manages the way you do. I don't write anything down. It's a terrible, like, pattern with me, but you write everything down. You'll write a list, then you'll rewrite the list, and then
Mm,
you'll
I
rewrite the
do.
2 lists, and I'll look and I was like, "You have 17 lists." Yep. I'm like, "Wow, okay." So, Catherine also loves to print the internet, but that's another episode. So,
Gosh.
I think creating patterns and creating, routines is to me, is important when you're learning how to manage your time effectively, and teenagers, just watch them. They manage time awfully, right? Like, it's terrible. It's
Uh,
terrible. "Hey, I wanna go I'm thinking about going to dinner with my friends." "When?" "In 5 minutes." "Well, it's like 10 o'clock at night. Did you check if they're o" "No." Well, they wanna check to
so
see if the
true.
restaurant's open, right? Like,
Yeah, how many times has that happened?
but why do and that's the thing, we care as
Yeah, right.
parents or older people, we're like, "That's dumb," and the kids are just like, "We'll find somewhere, right? We'll end up somewhere. Why
Or
can't we be
not.
more like that?" Right? And they
Yeah,
don't care. So, I think also it's it works both ways. So kids or teenagers can teach us how to not stay in the routine so much that we
right.
lose sight of the ability to break the routine. And you're really good at that as, you'll come home and be like, "All right, enough. We need to go. Right now, let's get out." Right? Like I can't watch you go over to the stove and make dinner for yourself again tonight. We're doing something
At
different.
7:30, 7:30.
Yeah. Okay. I don't like eating at 4 PM. I'm not elderly yet.
That's me. I like to eat early.
Yes. You don't
Yeah.
eat, you just inhale. You actually don't
Hey,
eat
that's
anything,
a
it's
whole 'nother topic.
yeah.
Let's move on. I will say too, so if we're talking about transferable skills, it is so easy to fall into the trap as a parent to just yell at your kids or to be like, "Why are you doing that?" And it's crazy because we go to work, right? And we deal with people that frustrate us, but we're not like, "Why are you doing that?" Why do we feel like we could do that at home just because we're family, as opposed to doing that at work? And I will say that especially when the kids were teenagers or, are still teenager, talking to them about and trying to understand their mindset of why they made a decision and talking through that and then talking through the consequence if it was not a good consequence, like, that is conversation that you would, I hope, have at work, you know? And if you are at work yelling at people, then that's a whole whole 'nother podcast, but, we'll dig deeper, but, why do we and I've been guilty of it too. It's like you come home and you're like, "Well, why'd you do that?" But you and I both have learned that having calm conversation and understanding why the kids do what they do, understanding the mindset and helping them kind of work through that and understand it for themselves goes way further than yelling at them and they're like, "Well, you're just mean, you're hard on me, you're this, you're that." Because then they don't wanna understand. There's no
Mhm.
growth in that, and I think that's the point is, as a leader, we're trying to help people grow, and your leadership style dictates whether it's growth or not, to a certain degree. They either grow in a bad way or they grow in a good way.
Yes, and I think understanding which hat, stance, leadership style you need to use in a certain moment, having the emotional intelligence to know
Yes, right,
how to handle your anger, how to handle your frustration, how to handle your joy, so it's not always just in the friction situations, but it's all situations. So I think
right.
it's important to understand your audience and also understand your temperament and when it's when it's not the right time, when it's
Yes.
time to just stay silent or be more encouraging, even though you
Right.
wanna just say, "Why did you just do that? I just told you
Yes.
to do the exact opposite, and you just did this. Why? Why would you
Right.
do that?" So, no one deals well with that, and I mean, this whole house will make fun of me because they'll hear me on the phone interrogating people that call me and are just trying to screw me over or do something. Telemarketers are my favorite. That's
Solicitors.
yes, so dumb to exhaust that level of, but it does, to me, it keeps the skill sharp, but I think getting back to the real topic, I think it's important that we know how to read the room and also know how to deal with people in friction moments. So one of the things, I'll be brief, that through one of the certifications I went through, it was literally taught us how to call out friction and talk
Mm,
about how to design for when you're in friction. So if you're having friction together, are we going to yell at each other? Are we going to sleep in separate rooms? Or are we going to figure out a time where we can actually put the problem out in front of us and talk through it? Right.
yeah.
And create that agreement that we understand that now's not the right time. My head is flooded with anger and I'm not going to come across the right way. So I'm going to communicate to you. I'm going to walk away. And we don't just do this with each other, we do this with the kids as well.
Yeah.
We communicate how we're feeling. Yo, you really pissed me off. This really didn't land well. I need a couple minutes because I'm not feeling great about talking about this. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean we're not going to talk about it, but right now it's just too angry, right? I'm too
Mhm.
upset, too emotional in the wrong direction, so I need to process through it. And I think that's been uncomfortable. That
Yeah.
creates a level of discomfort. And I think too, one thing that you created, and I'll let you talk about it if you want, is
Thanks.
wow, the moment you take from when you did something wrong to when you realize it's time to talk about it, right? The window of whether you apologize, how long you let that
Yeah.
breathe, how long you wait to address it, stuff like that. I think that I've seen you progress in a way that was you weren't comfortable a lot of the times. And maybe you can talk about your experience with afraid to push your kids away because you've had to teach them something.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always to me, that's been one of the biggest challenges is dealing with friction, which I feel is transferable in the workplace as well as at home. Growing up, uh, and I think a lot of people could say this about their parents, like within our generation, is maybe you didn't. Your parents really didn't talk about problems or friction. There was not a lot of friction. Things got ignored. And so I had to really get out of that habit of just letting things go, meaning giving the kids a pass instead of addressing things, even though it was really uncomfortable for me and for them, and it took a long time for like the kids were older, telling them don't shy away from confrontation just because it's uncomfortable and I had to do that. I had to lead by example, and that was really hard because, I was always in the back of my mind, I was always like, how far can I push with, before they start hating me or before they start, not wanting to talk to me about anything. And so that was always in the back of my mind, but I always tried to talk to them about, there's a reason why I don't want you holding all this in. I want you to talk about it. I want us to talk through it. I want us to squash this and move on, and you were actually very instrumental in helping me do that because my nature is I don't like confrontation. I'm okay at work dealing with confrontation, but at home with people that I love and care about, it's really hard for me. So you helped me a lot, like seeing things from a non-emotional perspective and how having those conversations early could really benefit the growth of the kids later on, and we've seen it. Now we've seen it and we're like, "Okay, yeah, the proof is in the pudding." It is. It is effective. But it was always very hard for me. I mean, I cried a lot, because I was so worried that I would push too hard, but kids are resilient, and when I say push too hard, it wasn't like being mean or anything. It was trying to get the conversation going and continue talking to them without pushing them so far.
I think also you would sacrifice some of the ability to teach in that moment because you wanted to avoid.
Right.
So
Yeah.
avoiding the confrontation doesn't make it go away. It just pushes it down for a moment in the future for it to pop back up.
Yeah. And I will say most of the time, I kind of figured out my own process that works for me is when something would happen with the kids, I normally wouldn't talk to them right then and there or right away about it. I would have to leave the room and go process it. Like even Travis now, it's like a joke. He's like, "Are you going to come back to me tomorrow and want to talk about this?" But it works for me, being able to kind of strip out the instant knee jerk reaction of emotion if he says something or if Becca says something, and being able to go process it and think to myself, okay, what needs to be addressed?
I think too, you can't stay mad for I shouldn't say you can't stay mad. We really encouraged everyone to if you're gonna
Yeah,
be upset, that's okay, but it
right,
has to end at some point, and we need you to recover. Let whatever is looming, let's talk through it and flush the toilet so we can all
right,
carry on and have a better day than where we are right now, and I think
yeah,
that was a fun experience. I know that sounds weird to say it that way, to watch the learning from that. I gotta say, I was always impressed with the kids when they would come downstairs and be like, "Sorry," and just completely rebound.
hmm,
But
yeah.
it
It
wasn't
took a
just
while,
sorry to move on. It was
right?
truly, "Hey, I'm sorry." They would explain kinda their point of view. We would have a dialogue, and it would go away. And one thing that is nice in this house that I did not bring here because I hold a grudge, like, bad, was just that, right? It doesn't get brought back up. You don't
Mm-mm.
throw it
No,
back in somebody's face when "I've told you this, why are you keep" it's not a matter of, "Here's the receipts of every time you screwed up, and I'm gonna make you feel worse." It was much more thoughtful, methodical in a way that every moment was a stepping stone to get to the next kind of experience. So,
right.
it was
So
good.
let me move us to a different topic, burnout.
Mm.
So, burnout with leading in general.
I don't know if I've experienced burnout with it. I enjoy it so much. Now, I think I experience maybe I'll say it this way because I know you experience it. A lot of things one day, I'd love to do a time lapse of Kathryn, her day, how much she's running around, all the people she interacts with, all the things she does. It's exhausting. I'm exhausted just watching. I think for me, the burnout is the emotional strain and the emotional toll it takes leading
Mhm,
people and truly caring about them in a way that it does drain you, does
mhm,
take a toll. And I think that burnout, those indicators, you really need to acknowledge those indicators in a way that it's signaling for you to take a rest, take a break, self care, retract away from things for a moment, which I'm not great at. It's that whole, hey, I need to take a step back because this is just taking a toll on me is not not a huge strength of mine.
yeah,
So that's where I experience burnout is just give, 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 give. And sometimes when you're doing this, and I think a lot of people can probably relate to this, you don't feel like people are putting back into you.
mhm, right.
And it doesn't take much. I feel like there's certain personality types where it doesn't have to be reciprocal all the time. It's
No,
just every now and again, you need to feel that what you're doing is good and people are
right.
acknowledging it. And that gives you the appetite to keep going or the desire to keep moving forward. And
A little
sometimes,
encouragement.
yeah, sometimes you don't get it and you're just like, man, this is tough. And that's those low moments, those kind of fatigue, the areas of fatigue that can really start to rattle your thinking in a way. It's like, well, maybe this isn't worth it.
Right.
Maybe this whole, touch a heart, open a mind thing is just stupid. Why are we doing this? Right. I
Mhm,
just want to tell you what to do. It's quicker.
right.
And you've
Yeah,
been there. You've
I
you've
have.
you've come home and said that. I just wish people would do what I want them to do, and so I can be more productive in doing what I need to do.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I feel like that is a little bit of a different topic, just in terms of leaders need help, It does get like, sometimes and I never used to think about this, but being on the other side, leading or trying to lead, you start understanding a leader's point of view. We look at leaders and we think, well, they're on green 100% of the time, meaning they go and we for some reason, I don't know why, we just expect them to go, 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 do, and you know, they're human. Like these are people that need a break. They need encouragement. I mean, they need all the things. They might be really good at leading, and trying to make good change but they're human and they need help. And I think for me specifically, and this is at home too, sometimes being a leader is a lot of time being a leader is a very thankless job. People oftentimes I think they're like, "Oh, you're at this level, at your career, you don't you can do it all." And even as a parent, your kids are very like, "Oh, well, dad, they'll take care of it or whoever will take care of it," and it's taken for granted. And I think sometimes it's good to step away and recharge, and to even communicate to people, "Hey, you know, I'm leading, but I need some help. I'm tired, because I've definitely I can think of a handful of times over my 20 years where I've had major burnout. And I love to help people and I love to lead and I love to make things better, and that truly is my nature. But you do get to a point where you're like, "Is it worth it?" I'm giving, 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 and I feel like going back to kinda what you're saying, are there am I just doing all this, or am I able to teach people to also lead? And I think that part is sometimes the hardest. It's like I could do it all day. I can take care of stuff all day long. But am I really doing anybody any good if I'm not coaching, if I'm not teaching other people how to do it? And to me that's the more important part. And when you have people that are not interested in that, or they don't really want to do that, sometimes it can be frustrating.
Yeah, one of the things that just came up for me as you were talking about that is if my leader doesn't believe in me, why would I believe in them? Right?
Mm,
So I think we use the term leader, and I think everyone is a leader. It's just we all lead in different ways.
mhm.
So I think you need to believe in people. You truly
Yes,
do.
you
I
do.
there's a joke with a lot of my colleagues or former colleagues that I would always be brought in to a company or a consulting outfit or whatever, and I would always get the teams that were affectionately called the land of the misfit toys, the groups of people that just didn't work well with others, and I
Right,
loved those groups. To me, that those are the best. I love the opposition. I love the person that is like, "No way. You will never," and that to me is the changing of hearts and minds because the potential is there. All
right,
you need to do is believe in them and help them get to where they wanna be or help them understand how to get to somewhere different that will warrant a better outcome. I think that's exhausting. Like,
yeah,
especially, and I don't wanna keep harping on it, but I think as we grow up in the systems that we grow up in, we either are individual contributors and really good at that, and then given a management or leadership role that we're probably not prepared for or haven't been taught anything about. And so you're doing two jobs and probably not doing either one of them very well. Not everyone is meant to be a people manager.
right, that's
And not
true,
just like, I hate to
and
say it
that's
this way, but
okay,
not, yeah, but not everyone's also meant to be a parent.
right,
Right? Like sometimes it's just not it takes a long time to learn the qualities to me of how to not just be a nurturer, but also be someone that can direct traffic when needed without crashing all the cars.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's not easy, and unfortunately, the mistakes we make along the way impact people. It's not
Mhm.
just, "Hey, I spelled that wrong," or "I sent the email to the wrong person." This could leave a mark. I mean, think about what we just talked about in the past hour. These are all marks that have been left on us from other people.
Yes,
So,
yeah.
instead of collecting and using it as a point to push back in a way, use it as learning. I also, Catherine, I don't know if you joke with me about it, but I always talk in quotes, right? I've only been able to get to where I am because I've been able to stand on the shoulders of giants. That's
Mhm.
truly the way I think of things, in the way that everyone needs to be built.
Right.
Kids, professionals, people,
And believed
leaders.
in.
Yes.
Yeah.
And and just because 'cause you're looked at as a leader doesn't mean you're an expert in everything.
Right,
You still
right.
need to We all need to be lifelong learners. However you create that learning jersey journey is important. I still got
Yeah.
football on my mind. Shout out to the Eagles. So, yeah, it's important. It's important. I really do think that you should be investing in other people, the way that you would. I mean, it's biblical, treat others as the way you would wanna be treated, and to
Yeah.
me, it's treat others in the workplace, at home, the way that you would wanna be treated.
Yes, definitely. I remember you triggered some memories. Early on in my career, I had a woman boss, and I was, being young and out of college, I really love the young graduates, that have that energy and they're excited to be out in the world, and there's an innocence to it. And it's always hard for me to see them go into a workplace and just get crushed. And I remember going into an office job, and it was in marketing. And I had a woman boss who had been there for years. And, they had brought me in to train me to eventually take on her role because she was going to retire within the next year or two. She did not like that, and she held information from me, and she did not believe in me. She did not encourage me. And I didn't last there very long. And I remember thinking to myself, I'll never be like that and will never do that to somebody. And it made me feel so bad. And I think we all go through learning experiences in life, and we kind of have to kind of help us figure out, well, what kind of leader do you want to be? Do you want to be a leader that steps on people, to get where you wanna go? Or are you the type of leader who encourages people so that you're all going up together? And that was my choice early on, and that was kind of one of the questions is early on, or when did you decide what kind of leader you wanted to be? Because I saw a lot of people. I had somebody ask me at this event couple months ago, they were like, "Oh, you were a VP at Citibank. Did you have to play a lot of politics, to get that role?" And I was like, "No, I didn't." And I think a lot of people feel like they have to do that, but I never wanted that. I always wanted to be authentic, and maybe that did keep me from certain opportunities, but I didn't care. I wanted to be authentic. I wanted to watch out for people. I followed up on performance reviews. I followed up on recommendations for people to get promoted. I didn't want to be the bosses that I'd had in my life because it felt so bad.
Yeah. Have you ever sacrificed anything morally to obtain, like, a rank, or to obtain a position? Like, have you
That
ever had to put your
gosh.
morals to the side and say, "I need this, or I want this, so I'm willing to sacrifice something to get it," morally?
That's a really good question. Really good question. I don't recall doing anything like that to get a, you know, promotion or position. I recall having opportunities to do that and how icky it made me feel, how gross I felt. You know, like, I'll give an example. I was working for a company and they did a whole happy hour for the leadership group, and it was very impromptu, and the conversations that were being had, I went to the happy hour, but I could tell right off that this was an opportunity to people, with conversation or to rub elbows with certain people, and it really disgusted me. I have to be honest, and I didn't ever do that again. I didn't ever go there again. I think you can strike a balance when you're in situations like that. I was young at the time and not super experienced, but I think you can hold your own in being authentic, and I truly believe this now, as many years as I've had experiencing different things, I truly believe you can hold on to your authenticity and your integrity and be in these environments, and it's funny because the Bible, I'll throw in a Bible verse. The Bible talks about this. You can be in the world, but not of the world. And I truly believe as a leader that you can do that. You can be a leader and be around people that may not have the best intentions or integrity, but you can be a light for someone else that may not have that within that environment.
I love the way you just said that. That was really eloquently spoken.
Thanks. It's the only thing that is probably great out of this podcast I've said.
No, that's not true. So you bring up, and as we approach the hour here, I think one of the things that you and I used to talk about, what happens when you walk through the doors of work, right? Kind of double clicking into what you said. Why do we change personality? Why do we?
Mhm.
So we work with people at this is so pre COVID, we'd be in an office, and I can't tell you how many, and I was consulting, so how many clients I was working with where people didn't know that these people had families. And these are people that have worked together for years.
Right.
And we used to joke, we would have our scrum room, right? Our agile room, and people would be sitting next to each other and slacking each other, not
Yeah, I
talking to
remember
each
you
other,
telling me
right? They
that.
literally slack. I'm like, you're sitting right next to each other. So what is the desire not to connect, but just to
Right.
communicate, right? So we need to do more than just communicate. How do we create connection? And to your point about going to these dinners and stuff, I was always amazed. I don't want to go to a work function and talk about work.
Mhm.
Or
Yeah.
meaning I don't want to go to a dinner with work people and talk about more work. I actually want to
Right.
get to know, like, do you have a family? What are you in? Just get to know people on a personal level. I think it ramps up the ability to trust, build a connection, start to make things human and keep them human. But I digress. I digress. This was an interesting topic. I know you're not feeling great about it. I could see it on your face, but I liked it. I thought it was good. I'm just
I
kidding.
I I love talking about leadership. I love talking about how people define it, especially in today's world. Like going back to our original question at the beginning is, as a kid, who did we look up to? And I would pose the question that as adults, who do we look up to? Who do we admire? And I would pose the question to people listening, who do you admire and why do you admire them? Is it because they're millionaires? Is that leadership? How do you define leadership? And how are you leading? And everybody leads differently. So
Gosh, we need that conversation out in the open more now
yeah,
than
we
ever.
do. Yeah.
So I think
It's
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 important.
important.
I
Thanks.
agree. And I think it's also important for our for the younger generation, and I'll
Absolutely.
we can kind of close on this. An experience you brought me into a couple weeks ago was a mentoring experience for in college or recent college grads. And I think it was almost like a speed mentoring, like speed
Mhm.
dating, right? You had, what was it, 10 minutes
Mhm.
with
And
each
like
person,
yeah.
and there was a script of questions. Any case, one of the biggest things that struck out to me, or stood out, not struck out, stood out to me was the desire for wisdom,
Mhm. Mm.
the craving for the experience and knowledge that we brought. Now, yes, I had a fancy title and people, it creates a certain experience when you put the title in front of the name.
All right.
What was amazing to me was when people came up to the table and started talking to me, they're like, "Gosh, I would have never thought you would be like this based upon your title." And I was like, "Well, it's just that." And as you will learn, or if you haven't learned yet, title is just that. It's just words on a page, right?
Mhm.
So, are you exhibiting the behavior that supports a title like that? Depends on what
Right.
behavior you're trying to drive. But I think for me, I would encourage everybody to stay connected to the next generation of workers and people, and inspire them to understand that just because you enter in the doors of a corporation or a company doesn't mean you have to surrender your ability
Right.
to
I
want to be
love that.
better. So don't surrender your heart, and don't shut down your brain and just become mindless and
Mhm.
punching keys. You can still aspire to be something. I never made it to be a DJ. You never made it to be an animator, but we made it in other ways, and we
Yes.
still did not sacrifice our desire to explore everything and anything
Mhm.
and be creative and imaginative, even in unimaginative work environments that lack
Right.
any creativity or imagination. So, building people can be extremely creative and extremely imaginative. So, we often look for opportunities to be given to us. And as Catherine and I are experiencing in a very difficult economic time and job market, that sometimes you have to create your own opportunities with and explore
Right.
other skills that might feel uncomfortable. So,
Can I
lead.
pose a question
Yes.
for the listeners? I really challenge you to define what leadership is to you for yourself, as what leadership looks like to you, but also what you look for in leadership in others. I feel like that is a very important question. Whether you're a parent, what does that look like as a parent? What does it look like as a friend, in any of your relationships, and then also within the workplace. So I would love to close on posing that question and inviting people and challenging people to really think about that.
The one of the areas you forgot to ask, so I'll say yes, and
Please do.
spiritual leaders. So
Yes,
that could probably be I think that'll be a future podcast for us, but also spiritual leaders.
I
How do
love
you see
that.
your spiritual leaders? What makes a good spiritual leader, and what doesn't make a good spiritual leader,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
I think in closing, great question. We would love to hear your feedback. We'd love to hear your opinions. Make sure you like, follow, and subscribe. We're on all the streaming platforms, all the podcast platforms. So check us out. We try and release a new podcast every week, usually by Monday. We're a day late today. It was a rough
Because of
weekend.
me.
That's not true.
Yeah.
We encourage you to engage, keep listening, keep subscribing, keep supporting, and let us know how we're doing. And that episode 5 is in the books.
Mhm.
In the
Thank you all
books.
for listening.
Yes, thank you. And have a great rest of the week. And
See you
let us
soon.
know if you want to hear any other topics.
Yes. We're happy
All
to
right.
share.
This is the Well saying goodbye. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Kat.
Take care.